Sebastian Telfair was supposed to be that guy, the Brooklyn Prodigy, the next great New York point guard, a story that should have ended with NBA glory and a retired jersey. But instead, it became one of the wildest, saddest, and most shocking downfalls in modern basketball.
I'm daddy, security, a maid, a janitor. Y'all see y'all doing y'all thing. I know y'all shining, you feel me? But on this daddy thing, I got it. Lock. I used to say grapes, and then the grapes would drop out of nowhere. Grapes.
And what makes this story even crazier is that it didn't end when he left the NBA. It didn't end when he caught weapons charges. And it didn't end when the feds came knocking in 2021. Because even after his sentencing, even after he pled guilty, even after he stood in front of a federal judge and promised to change, Sebastian Telfair found himself right back in trouble. Years later, on supervised release, violating again. And the government finally said, enough. They demanded every report, every probation log, every note, every violation, his entire file, every mistake he made, exposed. This isn't just the story of a fraud scheme. It's the story of what happens when fame fades, money disappears, and bad decisions start adding up until everything crashes. Let's get into it. In 2021, federal prosecutors dropped a bomb on the basketball world. A 44-page superseding indictment naming 18 former NBA players and detailing one of the wildest fraud schemes the league had ever seen. The target of the scam? The NBA Players' Health and Welfare Benefit Plan, a medical benefit fund meant to protect players and their families after retirement. Players earn a certain amount of medical credits based on how many seasons they played. The plan pays out for legit medical expenses, surgeries, dental work, rehab, and long-term health care. But according to the feds, a group of former NBA players saw something else, a quick way to cash out. Leading the operation was former Nets player Terrence Williams, the alleged mastermind behind almost everything. The indictment paints him like a street-level CEO. He gathered doctors, recruited former players, coordinated invoices, collected kickbacks, ran the scheme like a business. The fraud was simple: fake invoices, fake treatments, fake chiropractic services, fake dental surgeries, fake wellness visits. Players would submit paperwork saying they had expensive procedures done, but they were never in the office. Some weren't even in the state. One player supposedly got $48,000 worth of dental procedures on a day where his phone's geolocation showed he was in Utah and Nevada, nowhere near the California dentist he claimed to see. Another player allegedly had root canals on 18 teeth in one sitting. Impossible, yet approved. And this wasn't small money. The indictment shows $1.6 million in fake chiropractic claims, $1.1 million in fake dental claims, hundreds of thousands from wellness centers, and kickbacks flowing through text messages, Cash App, and under-the-table deals. And right in the middle of this, Sebastian Telfair. According to prosecutors, Telfair submitted $358,356 worth of fake invoices and got reimbursed for all of them, every single dollar, all at once. A massive one-time sweep of fraudulent claims. He used fake chiropractic invoices, fake dental invoices, documents prepared by a co-conspirator posing as a legit clinic, and claims created under Terrence Williams' direction. And the indictment leaves no room for misunderstanding. The services Telfair claimed to receive never happened. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't sloppy paperwork. The feds say it was intentional fraud. But Telfair wasn't alone. He was part of a roster that included Shannon Brown, Darius Miles, Tony Allen, and his wife Glenn Big Baby Davis, Ruben Patterson, Allen Anderson, Keon Dooling, Chris Douglas Roberts, and many others. This was the NBA fraud ring nobody saw coming, but the indictment was just the beginning, because then came the sentencing. Once Telfair pled guilty, the government finally spoke publicly, and they did not hold back. In their sentencing memo, prosecutors painted Telfair as a repeat rule breaker, someone who had several runs with the law, a man who struggled to follow court instructions, a player who submitted a higher loss amount than most others, and a figure whose fraud helped undermine trust in the NBA's medical plan. They went even deeper than the indictment. The memo explains that Telfair's fraud didn't just steal money, it damaged the entire league-approved benefit system. They say his actions risked hurting future players. His fake claims could jeopardize the plan's tax-free status. His crimes made it harder for retired players who genuinely needed health care. And then the government said something that hits hard. The defendant's conduct was serious, intentional, and harmful to current, retired, and future NBA players and their families. They even listed his bail violations, mistreatments, failure to report other non-compliance issues. All of this before sentencing. They saw a pattern. He didn't follow rules, didn't follow orders, didn't show consistency, didn't take court supervision seriously. But then something unusual happened. Even after roasting him, the government still recommended a below-guideline sentence. Why? Because other players in the scheme, players the feds considered him similarly situated to, already got downward departures or time-served sentences. So Telfair wasn't spared because they liked him. He was spared because of sentencing disparity, meaning they didn't want him to be punished more harshly than the rest. This part is important for your video's middle arc. The audience needs to feel the tension between he did something serious and he was treated like the others. But even with that leniency, the story wasn't over, because his defense team had their own version of what happened, and it completely changes the tone. Now look, the government came with pressure, but Telfair's lawyers, they came in swinging too. According to the defense memo, Sebastian wasn't out here living some mastermind double life. They tried to paint him like a man who hit rock bottom long before the feds ever showed up. They claim he didn't recruit nobody. He didn't organize the scheme. He didn't pressure other players. He only submitted his invoices one time, and that was it. His lawyers blame a lot of things. His short NBA career, his family issues, his financial struggles after retirement, his public downfall starting in 2017, his mental health, the pressure of being a teenage star from Coney Island. They even point out that his 2019 weapons conviction was overturned right before sentencing, meaning technically his criminal history got wiped clean. But the feds didn't forget the behavior. His lawyers try to make him look like a dude who was drowning, not scheming. They argue he wasn't even one of the players who made the fake invoices. He didn't coach anybody else on how to do it. He didn't take a leadership role. He wasn't moving like some criminal boss. He just got caught up. And another thing they push hard. They say Sebastian struggled with years of financial decline after the NBA cut him loose. Think about it. Went from having millions to bouncing around the league, to being out by age 28, to headlines about arrests, to dealing with a spiral. Nobody inside his circle seemed to stop. His defense memo reads like his life was collapsing long before Terrence Williams ever hit his phone with a play. And for the judge, that argument hit just enough to get him a break. Because even though he got a break, even though the judge gave him one more chance, even though he avoided the full hammer, Sebastian still couldn't stay out of trouble. But before we get to that twist, we gotta show the viewers what really went down in court on sentencing day. By the time sentencing day came, the judge already had the 44-page indictment, the government's memo roasting him, the defense memo defending him, his probation history, and his entire NBA arc. The government asked for a below-guideline sentence, but still wanted jail time on record. The defense wanted time served or the lightest possible hit, and then the judge broke it down. She pointed out the fraud was serious. The dollar amount mattered. The scheme hurt other NBA players. The behavior was intentional, and he already had a history of not listening to court rules. She also acknowledged he wasn't a leader. He wasn't involved in making fake invoices. He didn't recruit. Other players got lenient sentences. His overturned conviction changed his criminal history. His mental and financial situation was relevant. So instead of dropping the hammer, the judge gave him a break, a downward variance, basically saying, look, this is serious, but I'm not gonna bury you. I'm gonna give you the same chance everyone else got. Don't waste it. And this is the part of the story that sets up the twist. Because the judge gave him leniency, the government held back. His lawyers begged for one last shot, And then years later, Sebastian Telfair ended up right back in the system, not for fraud, not for a new crime, but for something that drives judges absolutely wild and makes them rethink every ounce of mercy they previously gave, violating supervised release. Here's where everything flips. After the judge gave Sebastian a break, after the feds stepped back on the prison time, after the entire NBA fraud case started cooling down, Sebastian still found a way to end back up in court. And not just any court appearance. I'm talking about a supervised release violation hearing, scheduled for June 26, 2025, with the same judge he stood in front of at sentencing. Supervised release is basically the federal version of being on a very short leash. You mess up even a little, they're dragging you right back. And the paperwork the judge signed tells you everything you need to know. Prosecutors told the judge, we need full access to his entire probation file. Every communication, every report, every violation, every internal note, every single thing probation wrote down about Sebastian since the day he walked out of prison. That doesn't happen for small mistakes. That happens when a defendant has been tripping over multiple violations. Enough that the government says, nah, we need the whole file. Something's going on. And the judge agreed. She signed the order instantly. No hesitation. Why? Because according to prosecutors, Telfair allegedly didn't follow his release conditions, didn't communicate properly with probation, slipped up multiple times, triggered enough red flags for the government to step in, violated the trust the court gave him. The memo literally lists reported violations of the conditions of supervised release as ongoing and pending before the court, meaning this wasn't one slip-up. It was an active problem. So now the same judge who showed him mercy at sentencing, she wants answers. The feds want everything. And Sebastian, he's walking into a 2025 hearing where the government already feels played. And the judge already feels lied to. That alone is enough to make any defendant panic. But what makes this so wild is the timing. Think about it. Sebastian got sentenced in early 2024. He barely had a year on supervised release. And by mid-2025, he's already back in the system. That's fast. That's reckless. And that's exactly the kind of twist that keeps viewers glued. And the paperwork is real. The government's request wasn't light. They demanded internal chronologies, log notes, communication records, activity records, supervising notes from both Southern District of New York and Eastern District of New York. You don't ask for all of that unless you believe the defendant is seriously violating or hiding something. This is the type of moment where the judge sits back like, did this man really waste my leniency again? And that's why this part hits so hard. This wasn't just the fraud. This wasn't just the past. This was right now. Sebastian's still fighting the same system he thought he escaped. Look, the feds don't write someone off just because they don't like them. They look at patterns, and Sebastian's pattern. It's ugly. Let's recap his federal file the way the government sees it. 1. NBA fraud scheme, 2017 to 2021. He submitted $358,000 in fake invoices. A high loss number. He got paid. He didn't recruit people, but he fully participated. 2. Arrested in 2021. Hit with conspiracy, wire fraud, and healthcare fraud. 3. Multiple bail violations. The memo mentions he missed required treatments, failed to report, didn't follow instructions, had several runs with the law before this case. 4. Pleads guilty in 2023-5. Defense says he was struggling mentally and financially. 6. Gets a break at sentencing in early 2024-7, and by mid-2025, back in violation mode. Sebastian Telfair has been spiraling for years. The fraud case wasn't the beginning. It was the middle of a long collapse. And the supervised release violation, that's the part that makes the story hit different, because it shows that sometimes, when life spins out, even mercy can't stop the crash. If there's anything the federal system hates, it's when somebody wastes the court's time. And that's exactly how the feds started treating Sebastian's situation in 2025. Because when the government goes to a judge and says, we want his entire probation file, all the notes, all the reports, everything both districts wrote about him, that's not normal. That's not, he was late for one appointment. That's not, he missed a phone call. That's not, he forgot to sign a paper. That's serious. A request like that means probation alerted the judge. The government is suspicious. There were multiple violations. They believe Sebastian is hiding something. They think there's a pattern, and they want proof to justify revoking his freedom. In federal language, that's basically the prosecutor saying, "Judge, we tried to give him a chance. He ain't taking it. We need all the receipts." The judge didn't just approve the request, she approved it immediately. No back and forth, no delay, no hesitation. And that's the sign of a judge who feels played. Remember, this is the same judge who, read the indictment, read the sentencing memos, knew his past, knew his struggles, still gave him a break. And now, she's watching him walk back into her courtroom because he couldn't stay solid on supervised release. That's how you end up facing a revocation hearing, where the judge can literally say, "You know what? Run the rest of that sentence. You're going back in." And that hearing was set for June 26th, 2025. That's the moment everything caught up to him. That's the moment his post-NBA era came full circle. That's the moment where the story stops being about fraud and becomes about self-destruction. But before we hit that final punch, let's zoom out and show viewers the big picture. When you go through Sebastian Telfair's federal file, it's like watching a man fighting his own shadow. Here's the breakdown of the journey. Once a teenage superstar New York legend, ESPN cover, one of the most hyped point guards ever. Then struggling NBA years, flashes of brilliance, but inconsistent, bounced team to team. Then weapons charges, public downfall, family issues, career gone. Then money problems, retirement hit him hard, bills piled up, lifestyle didn't match income. Then the NBA healthcare fraud. He submits $358,356 of fake claims all at once. Then the indictment pulled into a ring with 18 former players, exposed by the feds. Then the guilty plea admissions, lawyer letters, apologies. Then the sentencing, government roasting him for bail violations, defense begging judge for mercy, judge gives him a break. Then supervised release and more violations. By 2025, he's already back in front of the judge. It's like no matter how many chances he got, no matter how many times the court pulled him back up, no matter how many exits he had, Sebastian kept choosing the wrong path. This is what makes his story so painful, because this wasn't some random NBA role player who nobody cared about. This was a kid who had the whole world in his hands at 18. A kid whose mixtapes had grown men in the barbershop arguing. A kid who had the keys to Brooklyn and a future that was supposed to look nothing like this. Yet the file, the paperwork, the violations, the fraud, the hearing, it all tells the same story. He couldn't outrun himself. Conclusion: one more hearing. And now, after everything, after the NBA career, after the fraud case, after the sentencing, after probation, after getting a shot at freedom, Sebastian Telfair walks into one more courtroom in June 2025, a revocation hearing, a hearing that determines if he stays free or goes back behind bars. And the craziest part, the whole system, the judge, the prosecutors, the probation officers, they already know his pattern. They already watched him fall before. They already watched him slip again. And now they have every report, every violation, every note on his behavior since the day he walked out, because they demanded the entire file, all of it. And that's where we leave it. Sebastian Telfair, once the future of New York basketball, now facing federal court again. Not for millions, not for a conspiracy, not for new crimes, but because even after everything, he still couldn't follow the rules. And as he walks into that June 2025 hearing, only one question matters. How many more chances does Sebastian Telfair have left? And now, after everything, after the NBA career, after the fraud case, after the sentencing, after probation, after getting a shot at freedom, Sebastian Telfair walks into one more courtroom in June 2025, a revocation hearing, a hearing that determines if he stays free or goes back behind bars. And the craziest part, the whole system, the judge, the prosecutors, the probation officers, they already know his pattern. They already watched him fall before. They already watched him slip again. And now they've got every report, every violation, every note on his behavior since the day he walked out, because they demanded the entire file, all of it, and this time, they used it. Sebastian Telfair, once the future of New York basketball, finally ran out of chances. The judge sentenced him to 6 months in federal custody for violating supervised release. 6 months to sit down, think, and answer for everything he ignored. And in one last twist, he's now housed at the same federal prison facility as Diddy. Two fallen stars, both fighting their own battles behind the same walls. Not for millions, not for a conspiracy, not for a new scheme, but because even after everything, he still couldn't follow the rules. And when he walked into that June 2025 hearing, the question wasn't, how many chances does he have left? The real question was, what does a man do when the world stops giving him any?